Alright guys, a lot of students have asked me specific queries about Power Query Editor. So in this video I plan to cover the query editor in detail. Okay, so Power Query Editor is the tool, the portion of the Power BI where you can you can edit your data, you can basically extract, transform and load these functions can be performed using this particular part over here, right? So this is where you can edit your data, you can clean your data, you can prep your data. Okay, so let's see each and every element of Power BI Query Editor one by one over here. Okay, so I'll enter into Power BI query editor over here. I'm using a certain table. Let me explain the data in a while, or rather let me explain the data right now. It's just a simple data of Hollywood's most profitable stories, or I should say movies. These are audience score, what is the name of the film, what is the genre of the film, lead studio, profitability, Rotten Tomatoes score, total sales for the year is just one measure that I created. I think we can get rid of that. I don't need that measure now. So I can just do one thing, I can delete this from model. Okay, let me delete this from model right now. So I'll start with the exact data which I got. Worldwide gross is the revenue that the movie generated worldwide, and the year is the year in which the movie was released. So I have loaded this data right now. Okay, I've loaded this data, but if I want to get into Power Query Editor and I want to edit this data, how can I do that? So on this table view, click anywhere, right click anywhere, and go to something called as Edit Query. You go to something called as Edit Query. You click on that and a window of Power Query Editor will open up, and I think this has happened on my laptop. I'll take this and put it on the screen. Just a minute. Right, so this is the editor which got opened separately in a separate tab on my laptop. This is the editor that we have. Now, the same data, everything is there. Now, let's try and understand each and every portion over here of this particular part. Let me get rid of this first. I'll get rid of this tool that I've been using. I'll just remove this. Right, okay. Now, what we need to do is to understand each and every element over here for Power BI Query Editor and what this element can do for us. Now we have something called as tabs over here. Can you just see certain tabs, right? I guess I haven't taken all of them, right? So home tab right now in this video will deal with home tab. Then we have something called as transform. We can add columns as well, and there are certain view elements. These are, and of course there are tools. These are the 5 portions of the tab, and each and every tab has a specific ribbon under it. This is called as ribbon. This entire thing is called as ribbon, just like in Excel, right? Now each and every tab will have a ribbon. For example, here we are in home tab right now, it has its own ribbon. Once we move on to transform, it has its own ribbon. There are many elements over there as well. Once we move on to add columns, it has its own ribbon. Similarly for view and tools. All right, let me get back to home tab over here. File right now, in fact, if I just click on file as well, there are plenty of things file can do as for us as well. But right now, let's not get into that. This is just giving me the name of my table over here, right? Queries. Now here, if you go towards the right, this is something called as query setting. If you look at it, this is called as query setting. There are 2 things over here. One is the property of the element that you're querying, that is the data that you are editing. It basically consists of the name of the name of the database or table or Excel file that you're using over here. Most important is this particular portion over here, which is called as applied steps. Applied steps is basically a list of all these steps one by one. It's a list of all these steps that you have or you're going to apply to edit and change your data in the Power Query Editor. This is the basics of Power Query Editor over here. Right, so this is what we're going to study. Now, of course, there are certain other elements over here. For example, this right now, this thing is giving you a glimpse of your data. It's giving you a glimpse of the data. You can scroll down and see the data over here. Okay, and right over here, somewhere over here, can you just see here? You can see how many columns and how many rows does it have. So it has 8 columns and 74 rows right now. That's the data. Okay, now right, so now once I move on to the query editor, oops, I lost my mouse, here it is. Right, now the only thing that we see is nothing but the formula bar over here. This is the bar which I'm using. You know, at times this language that you're looking at, the one which is underlined right now with green, is called as DAX. Basically, at times there are certain functions which are automated in Power Query Editor. You can just do that thing, and Power Query itself is going to write the DAX for you. You don't have to write it again. Right? So this is something, this is the entire Power Query Editor over here, and this is what we are going to study. Today we'll focus more on Home tab and what Home tab can do for us. So I'll just remove this, right? And now I think we are ready to take it further. Let me go to Home tab and let's look at each and every part over here in Home tab. Now there is something called as, there is something called as new source, or rather I should say new query. If you look at it, each and every ribbon part, as I said, this entire thing is a ribbon. Now the entire ribbon will be divided into multiple subparts over here. For example, this is data, new query. These are data sources. These are parameters. This is querying. Manage columns, reduce rows, or I should say manage rows over there, sort the data, transform the data, combine and AI insights. These are all nothing but the entire ribbon is distributed into these portions over here. Cool. Now, data source settings. See, the point is, if you look at the new query over here, new query is basically, well, we'll come back to this. I think this is just basically to put up a data and to enter new data over here, or get to the recent sources. Data sources is again something that adding the data to this Power BI interface right now. Managing parameters, let's hold it right now. Let's move to the most important portions over here. One is managing columns, or other one is reducing rows. Let me start with that. Okay, so let me start with this one, that is managing columns. Sorry for this. Managing columns and reducing rows. And then, this is where we are directly impacting the data. Rest of them is kind of indirect things that we do with data, right? Now, if you look at it, we can remove columns. For example, I want to remove a certain column. Let's say I'll just click on this remove column, right? And it removed the column. Which column did it remove? The column which was selected. Let's say no column is selected. If I click on this, I'm right now on the genre column. If I click on remove columns, it's going to remove the genre column. Wherever I am there, where am I clicking, right? If I clicked on this, I don't have to select the entire column. I can just click one element of that particular column, or I should say one cell of that column. Power Query identifies that I'm there in the Lead Studio column. If I just click on this remove column, it's going to remove the entire column over here. Lead Studio is gone, right? Fortunately for me, a mistake like this is possible while navigating. What we can do is we can look at the applied steps over here. Applied steps is not just a list of all these steps that you're going to do. It's not just a list. What it does is it gives you the right to override the change that you've done right now. Let's say I've removed a certain column over here. Can you just see there's a step which is written over here, and just beside that step we can see there is a cross mark. Now if I hover on it, it becomes red, which means that if I click on that, that step will be undone. That is, I can undo my mistake over here. Control Z will not work on Power Query. Don't even try that. Applied steps is the only way we can move forward or move backwards over here, right? Basically move backwards, right? So this is how I can remove columns. I can choose columns over here. If I click on this, I can choose column, right? We can choose certain number of columns. For example, if I want to do some element in some column, I can actually select that particular column. I'm so sorry for this. I can select that particular column. For example, I want to do something in film, Lead Studio, Rotten Tomato score, worldwide gross, and only year. And if I click on OK, the entire data will become a subset of that. So I've just chosen that column. I've just chosen those columns only. And whatever I do will remain in these columns only now. Okay. Now, if I can just click on this, removed other columns. I've removed the other columns in a way, right? So if I choose these columns, I've removed the rest of the columns. Now, if I think that, okay, this is not what I wanted to do, I just was checking, I can just click on that red icon over there in the applied steps, and we can come back to original data. So choose columns gives you a choice to keep those columns which you want in your Power Query editor. The rest of the column will be gone, okay, will be actually deleted. And if I just go to this, if I just do one thing, if I choose column, let's say I choose only 2 columns, let me choose film and let's say lead studio, and if I click on OK, only these 2 columns are left in my data. Now by default, if I just go and click on this particular portion, close and apply, the rest of the data will be deleted, will be forever deleted. You have to load the data again if you want to change that. So you'll not see, once you click on close and apply, the changes will be done. Okay. Now I would suggest that don't try that. We can obviously get into query editor and probably undo that as well, but let's not try that. Okay. Now this is where we can remove multiple columns at the same time. We can go to a certain column, we can click on a column and we can go to that particular column. For example, there are 300 columns over here. Okay, there are 300 columns, possibility is there. It's huge data. Let's say year is right towards the end. I want to go to this particular column. I can click on year, right, and I'll be taken to that particular column. If I click on year and OK, I'll straight away be taken to that particular column, irrespective of how many columns are there. Okay. Now, right. So that's the point. This is what we can do with this. Is, as the name suggests, you are managing your columns over here. Removing columns, if I click on this drop down and we can remove, removing columns, if I click on this, we can remove certain columns and we can remove other columns, which can also be achieved by right clicking on the column. If I right click on the column and if I remove this, I would have removed this particular column, right? If I come down and say remove other columns, in that case, Power Query is just going to keep this column and remove the rest of the columns. Okay. So that is why what we need to do is to be very careful if I want to remove the column. For example, if I click on remove, it will remove that column, right? I'll go over here on Apply tab and undo my action, right? So this is what manage columns can do. Reduce rows, obviously, how are you going to handle your data? The data consists of, it's a table, right? The data consists of 2 things. One is rows, other one is columns. Manage columns helps us manage all the columns over there, right? Reduce rows is that particular portion which helps us handle the rows. Okay. Now how can it handle the rows? We can keep rows. Keep rows means that keep these rows and remove the rest of the rows. Remove rows means just the vice versa. Remove these rows and keep the rest of the rows. So they are complementary to each other, right? If I can remove certain rows by keeping the other rows, and I can remove certain rows by selecting those in the remove rows. Okay. So if I just click on keep rows, if I just click on this keep top rows, if you look at it, if I just click on this drop down, that drop down is giving me a lot of option over here. It's giving me the option of keeping the top rows, keeping the bottom rows, keeping range of rows. If I click on keep top rows, it's going to ask how many top rows. You want to say top rows, top means you need to give me a number. So if you give Power BI a number over here, let's say I just want to keep the top 15, it's going to remove, it's just going to keep the top 15 and remove the rest of them. For example, instead of 15, I'll just say, give me top, let's hold only top 5 rows. Okay. If I click on this, you'll see that rest of the rows will be gone. Now it is just keeping the top 5 rows and rest of the rows are gone. It's deleted actually, right? So I'll just undo this again. We can click on this and we can click on remove keep bottom rows, right? We can see that keep bottom 5 rows. The only difference being it's going to keep the rows from bottom instead of rows from up, right? Instead of the case over here. I'll just undo this, right? So this is keep rows. You can keep rows of a certain range. Then obviously it's going to ask for a certain range. So I say that let's start from 15th and give me till 37th. So I just kept 15 till 37. 37 minus 15, that is 22 plus 1, 23 rows will be there, including both of them, right? So now it says if I click on this, only 23 rows are remaining. As we can see, there are 37 rows over here. Hello, right? 8 columns and 37 rows. Interesting. No. I think I did some mistake in keeping the rows over here. But either ways, you can just click on keeping the rows, keep the range of the rows, and you will just do it. Now keep errors, keep duplicates is something that you can evaluate. Now I'll just click on this cross button over here to undo the change that I've done. Okay, so this is manage columns and reduce rows. Sort, obviously you're aware of the term sort over here. Sort means it's going to sort your data. You can sort the data based on A to Z or Z to A. Now A to Z, let's see. If I click on A to Z, what has happened? It is sorted the rows over here, right? If I click on Z to A, it still has sorted the rows. But how? The question is how. Now if I click on this, sort lowest to highest, sort ascending, right? So this is, okay, this is, I had selected this particular column. So it is basically using this particular column to sort the rows over here. Now, if I click on year and if I go to A to Z, right, it's going to sort as per the years over here. Z to A, right? Basically, it's a kind of sorting, right? So don't have to worry about it. Sorting is hardly used. It's not, and at times if you want to just see something temporarily, you use sort. Otherwise, what's the point of sorting the data, right? The next one is splitting the column, and in the next video, we'll move on to the next portion, which is transform. In fact, we'll not just look at splitting the column, we'll look at the transformation of the data. Now, in the entire table, there are few things. One is column. You're looking at columns. Manage columns helps you make the edit in the columns. Reduce rows helps you take care of the rows. But inside column and rows, what is there? There is data, all these things. And what is this? This is nothing but data, right? How do you handle this data? Then obviously that data can be handled by this particular portion called as transform, right? So this is the portion that we are talking about, right? We'll move on to that, right, in the next video.